Hello, it's Nina with Stitching with a Smile. Welcome back to our next segment in our Hardanger Stitch-Along. Today we will be doing the eyelets. Before we do that, one or two quick things. The first has to do with the skeins of floss that I used. I used the Caron Watercolours. Each skein is 10 meters, but because it's a triple ply, it actually is the equivalent to 30 meters. And a meter is somewhat similar to a yard. Not quite, but somewhat similar. So I used almost 2 whole skeins. I have one skein here that's left. I had 3 to start with, and a little bit. So I used over 1.5 skeins of the Caron Watercolours. So this would be equivalent to about 1 skein of the number 5 DMC Pearl Cotton. So 1 skein of the number 5 DMC Pearl Cotton should do you, or 2 skeins of the Caron Watercolours. However, I do like to err on the cautionary side, and I always get a little extra, just to be on the safe side. Especially if I make a mistake and have to do a lot of ripping out, I want the extra. Okay, our next order of business is remove all your guidelines. That is a nice part. You can get rid of all the guidelines and it starts looking more like a piece. You won't need them at this point any longer. Now, when I removed the guidelines, I left these on the outside. I didn't bother trying to remove those because my plan is to cut around it. Now, you don't have to cut around it. You can frame it, you can make it into a pillow, you can do whatever you like. And if you're doing that, then yes, you will need to cut and get rid of these guidelines as well. Okay, on to the eyelets. Okay, on our pattern, we have the eyelets. I've highlighted them in yellow. Just bring this up here, so there and there. So they're around each of these star motifs. So there's 4, and then there's 1 on each of there. So there should be 8 altogether. So if I pull up this, you'll see all the eyelets. Well, I haven't drawn them in, but that's where they would be placed. So there aren't many, and it shouldn't take too long to do these. We are going to do, let me think now, each outside eyelet will be done by itself. The inside eyelet, I'm debating, it depends on how long the thread is. We'll give it a try, and I'll let you know whether we do a couple and then tie off, or if we do one at a time and tie on our thread and tie off our thread. We'll see. Okay, so to do the eyelets will be part of this spread. So each line, again, is a fabric thread. Each dot is where you come up, and the arrow is where you go down. And each dot goes right down into the center, sharing that center hole. When you do these eyelets, it's your choice whether you want to pull them tight to make this hole bigger, or leave it somewhat loose so that the hole is much smaller. It's completely up to you. Either way looks great. So don't worry about that. Pick one way that's comfortable for you and just do it consistently. That's all that's needed. Now when you do the eyelets, you can either go clockwise or counterclockwise. Again, doesn't matter, whichever way is most comfortable for you. I tend to go, because I use the sewing method, I will probably go clockwise. However, either way works. Even though I did not draw each thread, I thought it would make it difficult to see, but each one of these dots goes into the center with a thread attached. So you will come up here and go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, all the way around. So up here, down, up, down, and the last one up and down. And then you either tie off your thread or you weave it into something to get to your next one. Now, if you are doing any pulling on these threads to open up this eyelet, even if it's just a little bit of pulling, which I might do is just a little bit, don't pull the first one. The first one is anchored in your kloster blocks, and when you pull that, it's going to pull the anchor, the part that was anchored off of it. So the first one you just want to give, if you're going to do any pulling, just a very slight, just make sure it's very snug. That's it. The second one and on is where you can pull, and when you get to the last one and do this and pull, it will open up that first one, so don't worry about that. Okay, placement. Each one of these, let me bring my pattern back out again. Each one of these is placed at the exact same spot. It looks like it's different, but it's actually the exact same spot. In here and up. Turn your pattern, in here and up. Turn your pattern, you can't see it, but in here and up. So that is the placement of every single eyelet, including here. So once you learn the first placement, you'll be good to go for the rest. Okay. Here we have the placement. This is the star motif that you've stitched. You're going to start, actually you could start anywhere on here. I'm just picking a spot. I'm going to start here, and my choice is to go clockwise. Like I said though, what you feel comfortable with, you do. So when I choose to do this, I will start counting from here. This is a hole, there's the threads around it, and I go up 2 and over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where I bring the needle up. So my choice will be to secure my thread behind the star. You could secure your thread behind the kloster blocks, but I wouldn't advise it, because that means that if you've secured it behind these kloster blocks, you have a thread trailing behind your work to the eyelet, which will be behind these stitches. And that just might get in your way. So don't do that. I would suggest securing your thread underneath this so that when it trails behind your work, it's not interfering with any other motif on your piece. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. For instance, if you decide to start counting from here, you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and bring your needle up here. I'm going to do it this way. Doesn't matter where you start. Okay, next you will be using DMC Pearl Cotton number 8. I'm using the ecru color. You can use any color you want, of course. I have in the past, if I don't have a DMC 8 or sometimes a 12, if I'm using a finer fabric, I will use the floss, because of course the floss comes in every color. And I will use 1 or 2 strands of floss, depending on the size of my fabric and how it looks. So if you don't have the number 8 Pearl Cotton, or if you don't like the color that you have, because they don't make all the colors in the number 8, you can use floss. I would do a test on the side of your fabric somewhere and see what you think looks best as far as 1 or 2 strands of the floss. You will change your needles before, when you were using the number 8 pearl cotton or the watercolors, you were using a size 22 tapestry needle. You are now going to use a size 24 tapestry needle with the number 8 pearl cotton or the floss, and thread your needle. Now, this thread is finer, so it will slip through your stitches easier. I do extra securing of the finer thread in the back of my work, just to be on the safe side, and because it's a little bit pulled, I would rather be safe than sorry. So first I'm going to take a needle and make a mark where I want to come up. So I'm going to be coming up right about here. I'm not going to actually, oh no, I should probably do it exact. So let me mark that. I can't do it in camera, so I'll just be a second. I'll bring it out. Now this is, I found, very difficult to see. This is where this thread ends, and you kind of have to pull it back to see that there's 2 threads here before I start counting over the 4. And I made the mistake of not seeing that and counting 1, 2, and then actually bringing the needle up 1 up. So be careful. Make sure that you can actually see those 2 fabric threads, and then count over 4. So actually we are going to be bringing up our needle here. I just put it in so I'm securing it. This is just a guide. Now let me secure my thread at the back, so I can see at the back that this is where I'll be coming up. I am going to try to come out somewhere here, somewhere in here. It doesn't really matter where. So what I will do is actually, I'm going to take my needle in, down, maybe like this, something like this, just to make it extra secure. Oop. Try that again. It does slide through very easily. Okay, go up. And be careful, because you can still pull it out at this point. I'm going to go down. So I've jumped over a couple of threads. I'm going to go down, back to the center. And now I think it should be secure. So I just did. I'll show you what I did. Oh, did I lose the needle? I lost the needle. Yeah. Okay, well, so much for my guideline, my guiding needle. Okay, so I'm just going to come up here. Okay, so did you see what I did? I'm hoping I was in camera. I started my thread by going in, came out in the center, went up through those threads. I'm at the back of the work. Went over a couple of threads, back down behind those threads, and back up again. So that hopefully should secure it pretty well. There we go, that should be good. Okay, now let me re-find my starting point. I think this is it. Let me double check that. All right, so if I go down 2 and then over 4, I'm right where that started. Or if you go up 2 and over 4, that's where I'm starting. So you'll see that you come up in a square, come up, down in the center. So at the center is actually 1, 2, 1, 2, or diagonally over 2. to find your center. Once you've found your center, you can find it for each one of these. So I'm up here, so 1, 2, 1, 2. There's my center, and I'm going to come up right next to that. And this one I won't pull too tight. Just get it good and snug. And then come up next to that. And now I can start pulling however I want to pull. So you'll end up with 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4 coming out here. This is the edge of your work. And 5. So it's really hard to get it right up underneath the camera. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm coming out the 5th. Now I start up the next way, and this becomes number 1. They start to become squished together, so it's hard to count. Just be careful. That's still over 2 threads, but just be careful. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is number 5. And I use my thumb to just bring it over so it's not on top of the previous thread, just to have them laying flat. And I'm not pulling that hard, yet it's opening up quite a bit. Now it's very hard to see, but I'm following this line here to bring my stitches out. There are 2 threads in there, but they are kind of squished. So just be a little bit careful. And my very last stitch, which is right beside where I started. So to complete that last one, I go down to the back. And there's your first eyelet. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this. But whoop, that's the last stitch hasn't been secured yet. Okay, so I will bring this to the back of my work, and that's, so I'll be following, that's where I came up, and I'll follow the same way down. I don't want the thread to go over or to be seen, and that will secure it. So what I will do is go down then up and okay, so what I did was, I always have to stand up to look, see if I'm in camera. Went here, I went down in here, up, turned it around over a couple of threads, down, and I believe I'm going to go up here. Let me just double check that on the other side if I'm going to start the right way. Where is that? That's there. And that'll be the exact same start. Okay. So I'll come up here and let me just figure out where I need to bring it up. So we secured our thread behind, this is the front of the work, but we secured it at the back of our work behind these. Came up here, went around, went back down behind our work again, securing our thread, and continued to secure it, and then up here and out. I don't want to go from here in and then just out if I went behind my work here and here, because you are putting some tension on this, and you are, even if you don't intend to, you will put a little tension on the first one. So I want to make sure it's pretty well secured in the back so that when that tension comes, it's not pulling all the way from here and tugging this fabric like that. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So you are going to do 8 eyelets, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7, and 8. The ones on the sides will be done each one individually. What I think for the middle I will do is this one thread, I will do these 2. I will secure my thread and start the next 2 with a new thread. And I believe that's it for this lesson. Our next lesson will be the cable stitching, and that is one of my favorite stitches, but we will do that in 2 segments because there's quite a bit of it. See you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.